Nepalese revolution, past and present. So this is Avinash. I'm a student and moderating these sessions on behalf of Vedika moderators team. So we don't have any music today because there is a problem in bot. So we start with this silent music. Uh, okay. Just before going to the session, we have some instruction to the participants. So first, friends, this is an audio meeting and it's streaming on Facebook and YouTube channel. So we have shared the link in Discord Vedika text channel. So please share the following links to those who want to follow the discussion and couldn't able to join Discord Discord channel, and use broadband internet and headphones for the better clear audio. So if you have any problem while listening to the session, please post uh, a message in Vedika moderator text, Vedika question information section. So before that, please check your internet and broadband internet and your headphones also. So if still any problem persists, please post a message in Vedika question information text channel. So our moderator team will ready for that task. And please post your questions in question information channel after moderator inviting the questions. Those who are listening to the sessions in Facebook and YouTube live streaming, post your questions in the comment boxes. So the speaker will answer the most important questions in his handles. So he will give into the Discord section. And there is a suggestion that don't post any questions in the watch channel chat box, because we are taking questions from question and information channel. So please post your questions only in question and information channel. Don't post in this voice or text channel. So as we already know, our this week's topic is Nepalese revolution, past and present. So the Nepal has witnessed a profound political upheaval, driven largely by the youth-led Gen Z protests against corruption, unemployment, inequalities, and governance issues. The protests, uh, which escalated into violent clashes, resulting in over 72 deaths and numerous injuries, culminated in the resignation of Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and a major shift in the country's political landscape. So it is interesting to see the role played by social media platforms, including Discord, that we are listening in the session today, in coordinating this upheaval and in electing interim leadership headed by Sushila Karkim. Historically, Nepal's revolution have been rooted in struggles for democracy, social justice, and national independence, with notable events such as the abolition of the monarchy in 2008 and subsequent efforts to establish a federal democratic republic. The present crisis reflects both the continuation and transformation of Nepal's revolutionary history. Communists who spearheaded the revolutionary movements in the past are at the receiving end now, as they are part of the coalition governments that incurred the wrath of the protesters. So today our speaker is Comrade Anand. He will present a materialistic analysis of these historic developments. Today he will speak about the history of past revolutions in Nepal, and tomorrow he will examine the latest unrest and the socio-economic developments that lead to this condition. As I already mentioned that our speaker today is Comrade Anand. He is from In Defense of Reason, and he already spoken on the topic of Gaza and the world in Vedika earlier sessions. So, Comrade Anand, if you're ready, please unmute and present your.
Thanks,
Yes.
Avinash. So, friends and comrades, we are going to discuss today. We'll focus mainly on the history part, historically, how especially the modern Nepal has developed as a nation, and what have been the various movements in this process. Because as we'll discuss, there have been very significant milestone in this journey of Nepal as a modern nation. And if you have to understand the youth uprising that took place almost a month ago in Nepal, uh, uh, we can only understand when we have the historical perspective, because it's not that it was the first widespread mass uprising in the history of Nepal. There have been many mass movements and very turbulent political upheavals in the history of modern Nepal. But uh, this youth uprising that took place in last month in Nepal was peculiar in the sense that this was the first youth uprising in Republican Nepal. Um, Before that, as Avinash mentioned, that till 2008, it was a monarchy which was ruling Nepal. So against that monarchy, there have been a long history of movements, people's movement, uh, mass movements led by the communists, and especially between 1996 to 2006, there was a period of people's war, what is known as Jan Yudh in Nepal. So unless we have a concrete understanding of these movements and the conditions in which these movements took place, and what kind of aspirations and what kind of desire of the people of Nepal, these movements and uh, these kinds of people's movement led, unless we understand that, we won't be able to understand what is the problem, what are the contradictions, what are the main debates and discussion going on in Nepali society right now. Because after this, especially this, what is termed as Gen Z revolt, now there is increased attention towards what is going on in Nepal. Even the mainstream Indian media has covered it widely, and different kinds of interpretations and even conspiracy theories are being peddled to explain why such a huge uprising took place. It was indeed a kind of earth-shattering event in the history of Nepal, and not just in Nepal, in the entire Indian subcontinent, especially coming after the last year's people's uprising led by youth of Bangladesh, and before that, the people's uprising in Sri Lanka. Even the ruling classes of India are scared, and this fear was reflected in the coverage of Godi media in India, which tried to somehow put forward some kind of conspiracy theory to first downplay its significance, or if that was not possible, then they'll try to present some in their usual characteristic style, some fake news they were offering. For example, one of the leading Hindi newspaper, Dainik Jagran, gave a main headline that Nepal's youth are demanding Hindu Rashtra. So Nepal's Gen Z is demanding Hindu Rashtra, which was complete fake news. So that shows that even the ruling classes of India are trying to misinterpret or downplay its significance. And one of the TV channels even they spread this false news that people of Nepal, or youth of Nepal, Gen Z of Nepal, revolted because they wanted a Modi-like prime minister. So all these were fake news, and obviously we can't expect anything better from Godi media. But even the independent, the so-called independent media and analysts who have been talking about these developments in Nepal have, in fact, presented some kind of conspiracy theory that it was uh, the CIA conspiracy, or it was the Indian state which tried to topple this government. So basically, there were many of such analysts were pointing finger at some kind of external factor which are mainly responsible for this kind of huge revolt in Nepal. But from a historical materialist perspective, we must first try to understand uh, Nepal, the society of Nepal, its history, and how it has evolved, and what have been the real questions and debates going on in that society. Only in that light we can really understand what have been the internal factors and also the external factors that have played a role in this kind of uprising. And only in that manner we'll be able to understand where this movement or where this uprising is headed, and what is the future of Nepal and Nepalese revolution. What and aptly the this discussion's title is Nepalese Revolution, Past and Present. So today I'm going to focus more on the past and what have been the different milestones, especially in the modern Nepal. And tomorrow I'm going to focus on the current Nepal and a bit about what we can expect in future. So that is going to be a broad outline of my talk today and tomorrow. So as I explained that if you have to understand the youth uprising, we have to understand Nepalese society first, because a lot of misinformation, a lot of conspiracy theories get weightage because in India there is very less knowledge about the society of Nepal. Most of the people in India either consider Nepal as some kind of some part of India, like there is a big brotherly attitude, not just among the Indian state, a large section of Indian people also don't consider Nepal as a sovereign nation. And the fact that Nepal, unlike India, was not colonized by British and its own peculiar history, that is not often known, and that also basically leads to this kind of conclusion that it is only the external factors that have played very important role in the history of Nepal, and the internal factors are not that much important. So we'll talk about the role of external factors also, but I think as per historical materialist analysis, our point of departure should be how Nepalese society, the modern Nepal, has evolved. Only in that light we can understand the geopolitical situation of Nepal and how it has evolved, what have been the contradictions, what have been the internal contradictions, and what have been the external factors which have affected the evolution of Nepal and the problems in Nepalese society. So, so if you have to understand Nepalese society, the modern Nepalese history needs to be traced back to 18th century. I think we need to go back to 18th century. Before 18th century, Nepal did not exist in the current form as we know it today. As a unified nation, it did not exist before later half of the 18th century. So we need to understand that history a bit. Of course, it's not possible in a matter of around 1 hour to discuss the history in detail, but at least some very significant milestone we should definitely discuss in order to understand Nepalese society. And before we discuss about the history of Nepal, we must also understand the geographical settings in which Nepal is situated, because that also plays a very important role in how Nepal has evolved as a nation. So, as you all know, Nepal lies between India and Tibet, and large part of it is mountainous. The Himalayan ranges, the Great Himalayan ranges, the Lesser Himalayan ranges, and the Shivalik ranges all cut across Nepal from west to east. And this, apart from this mountainous territory, you also have a very narrow stripe of plain region, which is known as Sarai region, which is adjacent to India, especially the UP and Bihar, and North Bengal, some part of North Bengal. So, and it is a landlocked country. There is no port of Nepal. So this geographical setting has presented some objective limitations for Nepal to become a kind of modern capitalist nation. This kind of very rugged topography, hilly region, and the landlocked location, and falling between India and China. So historically also there has been the rivalry between British India and the Chinese King dynasty. So it acted as a kind of buffer zone between the two. So this peculiar geographical setting should be first understood before we move forward to the history of Nepal. And this geographical settings in different hills and their valleys, you have different settlements in Nepal. And before later half of the 18th century, there used to be many kingdoms and principalities in different hills and valleys. There was no unified Nepal as such. So, and this Nepal, one important aspect of this geography of Nepal is that it consists of three major river basins: the Karnali, Gandaki, and Kosi river basin, which of course later come to India, and they become tributaries of river Ganga river, and they form the floodplains of Indo-Gangetic plain. But they originate from Nepal, and so in this river basin also, large section of Nepalese population also reside, apart from that hilly areas. So, and most of the population, more than 50%, live in this mountainous region, and around 30 to 40% live in this plain Tarai belt. And even despite being a small country, it is highly diverse also. Not many people in India are aware about the tremendous diversity of Nepal. Nepal not just consists of one homogeneous group of people, and there is it is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious, multi-linguistic nation. So Nepalese, of course, is the national language, but apart from Nepalese, you have many other languages. Different people in different parts of Nepal speak different languages, just as people in India speak different languages. In Nepal also, apart from Nepalese, you have another language, especially in the Kathmandu Valley. There is very different kind of ethnic community living, which is known as Nevar. So their language is very different than the Nepalese language. There is known as Nepal language, and so Nevar people have different languages. And if you go to Tarai region, let's say you enter from Bihar, from Raxol, then you'll find people speaking in Mathili. If you enter from, let's say, UP in Gorakhpur, from Gorakhpur, so you'll find people speaking Bhojpuri. And if you enter, let's say, there is a place called Rupai Diha in UP near Bahraich. So there you'll find people speaking Awadhi. And in this entire Tarai region, common language of people is Hindi. And they are also demanding that Hindi should be accepted as a national language. So it is a multi-linguistic society, and there are many tribal groups living in different parts of Nepal. The Tibetan Burmese tribes such as Tamang and many such tribes, Magar and Gurung. Many such tribes live in different areas in Nepal. They have their own specific culture, specific language and ethnicity. So, and they have their own kind of aspirations, which is often in conflict with other parts of Nepal. And there have been many political forces representing these kind of aspirations, which also have led to complexity in this problem. And even for the communists over there, this complexity, the complex and diverse society of Nepal have also presented a challenge. So now, so what I meant to say is that we need to understand that it is a very diverse country also. It's not very homogeneous normally, which often people understand that it is a very small country, so must be very homogeneous and single language, single religious. Even religion-wise, you have not just Hinduism, but very strong influence of Buddhism in Nepal. So Buddhism, even though it did not survive in India, but it did survive in Nepal, and you have a very strong influence of Buddhism even now in Nepal. And apart from that, of course, there is a Muslim population. There are a very small population of Sikhs also in Nepal. So it's a very diverse country in that sense. So now, in this background, now we can understand the historical evolution of Nepal as a modern nation. And so if you go back to that later half of the 18th century, so when there was no unified Nepal, there are different kings and principalities in different parts of current Nepal. They were ruling. For example, in Kathmandu Valley itself, there were 3 kings who were ruling in different parts of Kathmandu Valley: Kantipur, Lalitpur, and Bhaktapur. So, and similarly, different parts of Nepal were ruled by different kings. And then one of the kings, known as Prithvi Narayan Shah, who was the ruler of Gorkhali region, he went on to conquer other parts of Nepal and defeated other kingdoms. And by 1769, that he kind of unified this Nepal as we know it today. That came into existence after that conquer of Prithvi Narayan Shah. In fact, his followers went on to expand the territory, and they even conquered Sikkim and even the current Uttarakhand, the Kumaon and Garhwal region of Uttarakhand, and they even aspired to win Kashmir. But it was in early 19th century. It was Sikh King Ranjit Singh who kind of pushed the Nepalese kings away from their territory. But the entire Uttarakhand, the Kumaon and Garhwal uh, regions, were part of that Nepalese kingdom, basically. And by that time, of course, in India, you had the British Raj. East India Company was ruling. So there was a clash with British and the Nepalese rulers. And in that clash, eventually in 1816, the Nepalese king were defeated, and there was a treaty which was signed after that defeat of Nepal in that war between British and Nepal. It is known as Treaty of Sugoli, which is very important in the history of Nepal, because after that treaty only, that Sikkim was taken away from Nepalese territory and became part of British India. And then after independence later, in fact, much after independence in 1975, Sikkim became part of India. But there was a time when it was part of Nepal. And also Kumaon Garhwal regions of Uttarakhand, they became part of British India after that Sugoli Treaty. So despite that defeat, apart from this Uttarakhand and Sikkim, other part of Nepal, as we know Nepal, that continued to exist. And after that, there was no major war between British and the Nepalese kings. In fact, this was the period till 1846. There were a lot of political and kind of instability in Nepalese ruling classes. There are many different factions who were fighting against each other, and that led to many massacres. And in 1846, and one very famous court massacre, one of the nobles who kind of killed his rivals, and he became very powerful. So he took over large power of king, and he became a kind of prime minister. And the king became very subordinate after that. So this period between 1846 to 1951, this was 104 years of period, which is known as Rana period, because these rulers between this 104 years of this interregnum were known as Ranas. So they were basically a main power at that time, even though king was there, but king had very nominal power. Most of the real power was with the Ranas. So now Rana had very cordial relationship with British, and British did not go for war with Ranas. In fact, they took help of Ranas to quell the rebellion in India. 1856, 1857 Gadar revolt was crushed by British, and in that repression, the Gorkha army, as it was known, even now it is known, Gorkha, they were very helpful to crush that rebellion. And after that, British also kind of made a deal with the Ranas that they used to supply Gorkha soldiers to British Indian Army at that time. And in return, the British used to some kind of compensation, yearly monetary compensation to the Nepalese rulers. And that's how this kind of arrangement was there, in which British did not interfere in the internal affairs of Nepal. And the Ranas kind of isolated their country from outside world. This Rana period of more than 100 years was a period of seclusion in which Nepal was completely cut off from the external world. No influence of modernization was happening. That was a period of very autocratic feudal rule in Nepal, even though territory, common unified territory had come into existence. But in terms of mode of production, it was still a very feudal society, and no kind of disintegration of feudal mode of production and development of capitalism. Uh, that happened very slowly, and even after the downfall of Rana period, as we will discuss, that kingdom again emerged, and till 2008, this kind of feudal monarchical rule in one way or another remained there, even though there have been some periods in which multi-party democracy also came into existence. But this transition from feudalism to modern capitalist republic ended up being a very long and staggered in the history of Nepal. So one particular characteristic of Nepal is that it was not colonized, and that led to its sovereign existence as a nation, and that ensured this that because it was not colonized, so it was cut off from the external influences. But the other side of it was that this transition from very secluded and very feudal kind of society to a modern society, it took place over a very long period of time, this transition. And that in that transition, this Rana period between 1846 to 1951, that was one of the darkest period, because there was very authoritarian rule. And even though the Ranas, the rulers, were living very luxurious lifestyle, they were even visiting Europe, they were using the fruits of modernity. The people of Nepal were deprived of that, and there was no connectivity. For example, from Tarai to Kathmandu, like there was no highway. Like, so normal people could not even think of going to that. There was no like transportation facilities available. So, and even different parts of Nepal, even among the hilly areas, there was no connectivity. It was very disconnected and very kind of feudal kind of rule, in which in the villages you had landlords and who were exploiting the peasantry in hills as well as in Tarai regions. So, and of course, there was a very strong influence of Hinduism, and a caste-based society was there. So, and king and even Ranas were using this caste, Brahminical, patriarchal caste kind of value system. They were imposing that. So that was the situation of Nepal in 19th century and early part of the 20th century. So now against this, by 20th century, especially after the First World War, when Indian independence movement picked up, so even there were increased resentment in Nepal against movement. Had very strong connection with the Indian freedom movement also. Many of the leaders of that movement, in fact, a part of India's freedom struggle also, they stayed in India because there was freedom in Nepal. So So that was a time in 20th century, by 1930s and 40s. So NT Rana's struggle was becoming more and more pronounced. And when this World War II happened, especially after the Second World War, there was a change in the overall imperialist equation also. British imperialism was weakened, and it was almost sure that now British will leave India and a new government, indigenous government will come into existence. So, and on the other hand, you had new democratic revolution in China led by the Chinese Communist Party that took place in 1949. But that revolution took place over a very long period. So that was also influencing these developments, the anti-imperialist struggle in India, as well as anti-feudal and anti-colonial struggle in China. These factors were definitely affecting the Nepalese people also. There's some of those who happened to visit India for study purposes and all, they came into influence of these ideas, the modern progressive and even communist ideas. And that's how basically, despite this seclusion, despite this isolationist policies of Ranas, the increased repression and that kind of very feudal autocratic rule led to a very strong movement against Rana regime. And by 1950-51, that movement became so dominant that eventually even the newly formed Indian government led by Nehru also had to support this anti-Rana movement, even though Indian state in the beginning was having a friendly relation with the Ranas, but later on when the movement picked up, it became very obvious that Ranas' days are very numbered. They cannot stay for a very long time. So that was the time when by 1951 this Rana regime collapsed, and for the first time in Nepal, some kind of democratic institutions came into existence, multi-party democracy, but with a monarch in existence. So there was a constitutional kind of monarchy. So monarch still was there. After Rana's downfall, you had the king called Tribhuvan in this 1951 to 1955. And then after that, you had his son called Mahendra, who was ruling. But this experiment of democracy did not last very long. This entire decade of 1950s was full of political uncertainty, in which especially the king Mahendra, the new king, he started taking actions against any kind of democratic aspirations of the people of Nepal. In 1959, there was an election in Nepal in which the Nepalese Congress won with a thumping majority, and BP Koirala became the prime minister of Nepal. But that government was suspended, and a kind of royal coup took place by 1960-61. And this experiment for bourgeois multi-party democracy was very short-lived. So this decade of 1950s. So even though there was some progress in the sense that Rana regime, the autocratic feudal Rana regime collapsed, but and a kind of multi-party democracy, semblance of multi-party democracy came into existence. Yet, with this royal coup, so all kinds of political parties were disbanded, and he introduced what he termed as panchayat system, which was a kind of, he termed it as a partyless democracy, which was not at all any kind of democracy, which was like his own people were there in the panchayats also. So it was basically back to a very absolutist monarchical state. And now between this 1961 to 1990, again, this kind of absolute monarchical kind of situation existed in Nepal. Even his son, King Virendra Vikram, he continued that kind of repressive policies, and repression of any kind of democratic voices happened. So basically, since we don't have much time, we can't go into greater detail. I'll just speak in brief about what have been these major milestones. So one is that this 1951 movement, anti-Rana movement, and then by 1990, you had again anti-monarchy movement, which is known as Jan Andolan 1, in which large number of people took to the streets against monarchy, absolute monarchy, and for multi-party democracy. So Nepalese Congress and the Communists also took part in that. And as a result, this 1990, you had again multi-party democracy situation in Nepal, in which kind of a king agreed to give away some of his power, not all the power, but to some of his power, and parliament was constituted, elections took place, and parties were given approval. So now in 1990s, despite this multi-party democracy, there was no political stability. There was instability, and the new governments which came to power were very corrupt, and people were again fed up with this new kind of rulers who, despite being the claiming to be representative of the people, they were acting in a very autocratic manner and very corrupt manner. So against that, and also there was no headway for the very kind of very effective land reforms. In fact, some kind of land reforms did take place even during the king's rule, but there was no very effective or very radical land reforms even in 1990s when this multi-party democracy came into existence. The kind of feudal dominance in the production of Nepal, that continued, and that disintegration of feudal mode of production, the process of it was very slow. And all this was leading to a lot of resentment. The peasants, people living in the villages, they were getting disillusioned with this new multi-party democratic setup. And that was the situation in which by 1996, you had what is known as Jan Yudh, People's War, began under the leadership of the Maoist, what today are termed as Maoist. So we'll discuss about the history of the communist movement sometime, but we need to understand that this period between 1996 and 2006, that was a period in which this widespread People's War spread to different parts of Nepal. starting with the western, very remote areas, hilly areas of Nepal, to even more populated areas like Kathmandu Valley and even Tarai regions. This people's movement, people's war against this monarchical and oppressive and even multi-party kind of bourgeois democratic setup. So against this entire regime, there was increasing revolt, and that revolt was led by the communists at that time. And as a result of this people's war, by 2006, it was almost clear that now the days of this monarchy are numbered. And by 2008, this monarchy was abolished. And for the first time, Nepal became a republic, because even during 1950s and in 1990s experiment of multi-party democracy, it was not a republic because kings continued to play a very important role in the polity of Nepal. So it was the real major victory of the People's War in Nepal, and the fact that monarchy, not even a constitutional monarchy, came into existence. It was completely abolished. That was the real victory. So, in order to understand this reason why the communists and the Maoists were able to gain this kind of strong support among the masses of Nepal, we need to talk a bit about the history of the communist movement. We have briefly discussed about the history of modern Nepal, but in that history, we need to situate the communist movement, how it originated and how it evolved in different phases of Nepalese history. So, before that, another important event took place in Nepalese history was in 2001, when there was a royal massacre in which the King Birendra Vikram's son, Dipendra, he killed his family members. It was a very huge massacre. Although people in Nepal still do not buy that kind of theory that it was his son who killed. Many people still believe that it was the King Gyanendra, who was the brother of that king, who later on became the king of Nepal, and his son Paras, who were involved in that massacre. So that also was very important event in the history of Nepal, because that led to more and more disillusionment with this institution of monarchy, because as long as the King Virendra Vikram was there, still a lot of people in Nepal had some kind of faith, religious faith and trust. But after that massacre, that support base of the monarchy was weakened, and that was also one of the factors why People's War became victorious in very short period of time. Apart from that, of course, the sacrifices of the communists and their planning and their strategy and their tactics. So, that also I felt it should be mentioned. That was an important event in the history of modern Nepal. So now I think we can talk about the history of the communist movement in Nepal, how it originated and how it evolved, and it led to different fractions in Nepalese communist movement. So basically, Nepalese Communist Party was founded in 1949, on 22nd April, on Lenin's birth anniversary. Death anniversary. On 22nd April, 1949. So it was inspired, of course, by whatever developments were taking place in Nepal, in China. The new democratic revolution was about to be victorious, and of course, the communist movement throughout the world. which were gaining victory in different parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So as part of that, there was a huge influence among the people who came to study in India. They were influenced by Marxist ideas, and you had people like Pushpalal Shrestha, who was one of the founders of the Nepalese Communist Party. And apart from him, there were other people like Manmohan Adhikari who were also who took part in the freedom struggle in India, who was active in the Quit India movement also. So these were peoples who actually founded the Communist Party of Nepal in 1949. And they were, to begin with, their line was a very revolutionary line. And they clearly believed that we need to overthrow this monarchy. They were not talking about any kind of compromise with monarchy, which then other anti-Rana forces like Nepalese Congress Party, they were talking about some kind of compromise with the monarchy and some kind of constitutional monarchy. But the Communist Party, from the beginning, initially, at least in the few years of its initial years of its existence, it was talking about a new democracy, armed revolution under the leadership of the Communist Party, and taking this, taking along the peasantry. Still, it was a large section of Nepalese society was peasant, but the leadership has to be of the working class. So on the lines of Chinese New Democratic Revolution. So that's how this beginning of the Communist Party in Nepal took place. In fact, after the collapse of Rana regime, in which even the communists also played an important role, even though they could not take the leadership of that movement in their hands, they did play an important role. So, and they were at that time, you all know, in Telangana also armed struggle was taking place, peasant uprising, in different parts of India, in Appra Wayalar, in Kerala, in West Bengal, Tebaga movement and all was going on. So all these were influencing the movements, the communists in Nepal also. So now, after the collapse of Rana regime in 1951, even though multi-party democracy had come into existence, there was a situation. In fact, the Communist Party was banned even in that time because it was talking about armed struggle. It was talking about overthrow of the monarchy. But after that, what happened is that within the party, there was a revisionist trend which emerged. It was basically talking about some kind of compromise with the monarchy. And one of the main leader who spoke about this kind of compromise with the monarchy was a leader known as Rayamaji, who was openly talking about supporting the monarchy also. So this kind of very pro-monarchy revisionist trend started within the Communist Party, and even at the global level, with 1956 20th Congress, in which Khrushchev attacked Stalin, and there was a kind of he gave a peaceful his theory of three peaceful, that now we don't need to go for a very violent class struggle. Through peaceful transition, peaceful competition, and peaceful coexistence, we can move towards socialism. So as this line was impacting the communist parties throughout the world, in India also it was impacting the CPI at that time, and in the same way, even within the CPN, the Communist Party of Nepal, this kind of revisionist line in fact became dominant. And so much so that when the king Mahendra he abolished this multi-party democracy. People like Rayamaji went on to support King's action. So that was the extent of revisionism within the party. And after that, after 1960s also, in the early part of 1960s, this revisionist trend was dominant. But it was also the period when in 1963, great debate was going on in the international communist movement. And that was clearly now highlighting the fact that this Khrushchev's line is a very revisionist line, and that led to formal split in the international communist movement. A new revolutionary stream came into existence in different parts of the world, inspired by GPCR, Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in 1966. So all these developments were also influencing the communist movement in Nepal, and that's how some new trends emerged, which not just talked about revisionism of this mainstream the Communist Party, but they also started talking about new kind of revival of the revolutionary communist movement in Nepal. And mind you, it was the same time when in India also Naxalbari peasant uprising took place, and after that a new revolutionary stream emerged in India also. So that also impacted the communist movement in Nepal. So basically, new trends emerged in the communist movement in Nepal also. So these, we don't have time to go into details of all these different trends. We can only talk about the main dominant trends at that time. For example, there was a trend which was led by Pushpal, who was the founder of the Communist Party, who openly said that who openly criticized the revisionist departure of the other leaders of that Communist Party, the Communist Party of Nepal, and who talked about embracing Mao Zedong thought, and talked about new democratic revolution. That is a way forward, no compromise with the monarchy. So an overthrow of monarchy. So he was very clear. So in that sense, he was broadly on the correct line, even though he had his own deviations. There was some kind of sympathy or soft corner with the character of Congress, Nepalese Congress Party, and that was one of his problem. But broadly, overall, when one analyzes his role, it was overall progressive and positive role played by Pushpal. Now, the other trend was in an area called Chhapa in Nepal, which is very close to Indian border in North Bengal, near Naxalbari. So, taking inspiration from the Naxalbari peasant uprising took place in Nepal also. That was led by this group of people in Jhapa, an area called Jhapa. So now, but they, as happened in India, this uprising later on took to very adventurous direction, left-wing adventurous direction, and Charu Majumdar's line of annihilation of class enemy, that also influenced this Chhapa stream of revolutionaries. And so that overall it was critical of the revisionism of the mainstream Communist Party and its pro-monarchy stand. It was talking about armed struggle and revolution, but it took to very adventurous direction instead of going for a mass line. So that was the second trend. Now there was another third trend, which in fact was critical of both these new trends also. Apart from being critical of the revisionist trend, it was critical of even Pushpal because Pushpalal, as I mentioned, was having a bit kind of liberal attitude towards Congress, Nepalese Congress Party. So it criticized Pushpalal on that ground, but it went too far. In fact, it went on to declare Pushpalal as traitor of revolution, which was wrong. Because yes, there was some kind of confusion in the mind of Pushpalal regarding what should be the relationship with the Nepalese Congress when it comes to anti-monarchy front. But overall, he was still on the revolutionary path. Instead of having a debates and discussion and trying to convince him, this new stream, which is known as Central Nucleus, it was led by a communist leader called as Mohan Bikram Singh, who's still alive, by the way, who's one of the oldest communist figure alive in the Nepalese communist movement. So this Central Nucleus, so they basically criticized Pushpalal and declared him as traitor. So, and they also, of course, criticized Jhapa fraction, which was basically taking to very adventurous line. But to them also, they did not, this Central Nucleus did not talk about, like, they did not enter into debate, and they just declared them as left-wing adventurous. So even though this Central Nucleus led by Mohan Bikram Singh, it also later on in 1974, there was a fourth Congress of Communist Party of Nepal. So this group is later on came to be known as CPN Fourth Congress. So now, so even though overall their understanding was correct, they were critical of revisionist, they were critical of other deviations, right and left deviation within the revolutionary movement. They had a very narrow sectarian attitude. That was basically the problem from the beginning with this new group. But despite this, this Central Nucleus, or later on it was known as Fourth Congress, this even till this day, this remains the main point around which later different fractions of the revolutionary communist emerged, basically. So that's the very significant development in the history of the Nepalese communist movement. So one was the role played by Pushpalal in the founding of the Nepalese Communist Party. Second was this CPN Fourth Congress or Central Nucleus. Of course, later on, this CPN Fourth Congress or the Central Nucleus itself got fragmented and disintegrated, and many splits took place in this also. And that's how even now we have many communist parties, even within the revolutionary communist movement, just as we have in India. In Nepal also, there are many, apart from the revisionist left in Nepal, you have large number of parties who claim to be revolutionary communist parties. And if we trace their origin lies to this Central Nucleus or CPN Fourth Congress. Now this again got splitted in 1985. This Central Nucleus was again divided into different fractions. One fraction was, for example, led by Mohan Bikram Singh. It was known as Masal, MASAL, Masal. The other fraction, which came out of this Fourth Congress or Central Nucleus, was known as Mashal, MASHL, Mashal. It was led by Kiran Vaidya and Prachand, basically Pushpdahal Prachand, who became the famous Maoist leader later on. So he also came out of this CPN Fourth Congress, basically. So now these two fractions first developed within this Fourth Congress, and of course later on many more splits took place, and now the original CPN Fourth Congress was led by a leader called Nirmal Lama and Prakash. So they were still having claiming to be CPN Fourth Congress. So basically, what I am trying to just highlight is that this new revolutionary stream also got fragmented and new formations emerged. And this was happening in 1980s. And in 1980s also, this anti-monarchy movement was also picking up, in which communists were also playing an important role. And in 1990, Jan Andolan won. So this kind of multi-party democracy under a constitutional monarchy came into existence. So it was also possible because of the role played by all these groups who were active in Nepal. And along with this revolutionary stream, the revisionist stream, for example, after the death of Pushpalal, who was the founder of the Nepalese Communist Party, his wife Sahana Pradhan, she became the leader of that party, and that party later on really became a revisionist party. Later on, and other leaders like Mohan Bhandari and all, they formed CPN Marxist. And in 1990s, a new kind of unity among different revisionist parties took place. And that's how this party known as CPN UML, Unified Marxist-Leninist, whose leader was this KP Sharma Oli, who was forced to resign after the youth uprising in Nepal. So this revisionist party called as CPN UML had elements coming from different revisionist fractions. In fact, one of the main important source of this party happened to be, in fact, the communists who came out of the Jhapa rebellion. They started with left adventurist line, and they went to the other extreme of parliamentarism and revisionism, basically. Just as we have a very unique case in Indian communist movement of CPIML liberation, which started as a left adventurist party and then turned out to be a very compromising and revisionist party. Similarly, this Jhapa group, which started as a left adventurist, in fact, they had very close link with the CPIML liberation and its leader Vinod Mishra. And by 1990s, this CPN UML came into existence, which consisted of this Jhapa group and followers, some followers of Pushpalal and Madan Bhandari, different kinds of revisionist friends basically coalesced, and that's how this revisionist party was formed. And it won the elections also, but it could not continue its tenure, and there was a political instability throughout 1990s. So basically, this is how the communist movement developed in Nepal. So there was a strong anti-monarchical trend, the revolutionary communist movement. At the same time, there was a revisionist trend, which was having a compromising attitude, which even went to the extent of supporting the monarch's action. So, and of course, apart from the communists, you had this Nepalese Congress Party, which also had a very wavering attitude throughout this period. So this is how by mid 1990s that this Mashal group, which was led by Prachand, later on Baburam Bhattarai, uh, also joined this group. And this is the group which basically led that People's War, what is known as Jan Yudh, starting with 1996 to 2006 that Jan Yudh went on. And there were some in between, there were some deviations in during this Jan Yudh also. But overall, its impact was very positive, and it was mainly because of the role played by the communists who were part of this group, which later on was termed as CPN Maoist, those who are known as Maowadi today. So it was mainly their role, and they were of course inspired by Mao Zedong thought. Earlier they were terming as Mao Zedong thought, and they were also inspired by Peru's Communist Party's line. But then they also implemented that in the very specific conditions of Nepal, and a kind of people's war was led, which became successful in a relatively short period of time in overthrowing monarchy, but it also had some problem, because of which eventually later it also deviated a lot from the revolutionary path. We will discuss that in greater detail maybe tomorrow's session, how these Maoists who led that People's War, later on when they won the elections also, and they had a huge support of the masses, they could not fulfill the aspirations of the masses. And one of the reason of the youth uprising, which took place last month in Nepal, was definitely this increasing disillusionment with the promises made by the People's War, because that was the period of Nepal's history that really galvanized people of Nepal and modernized. Large number of women took part in the movement. They were part of the war. They were part of the army of that communist army. So large number of different sections of Nepalese society, different communities, different ethnic groups were part of this people war. So that kind of unified the people of Nepal, ordinary working, toiling masses of Nepal, the peasants of Nepal. That was indeed, by and large, based on the mass line, even though there was in some brief period, there was an adventurous deviation also, but broadly it was on the mass line. And that was the reason of its success. And that's how basically this monarchy, which was a century-old institution, which came to end. So I think in this backdrop only, we can understand the reasons behind the youth uprising, because in 2008, when the monarchy collapsed and a new kind of republican Nepal came into existence, on the one hand, it was a great historical advance in the sense that monarchy ceased to exist. On the other hand, it was precisely at that time that within the ranks of revolutionaries, some deviations were being noticed, and that started with some minor deviations, but later on, because of lack of that kind of debates and discussions and democratic centralist structure within the party, that could not be really an effective struggle could not took place. And that is the reason this party, which led the People's War, ended up kind of betraying the people's aspiration. And that is one of the main reasons why this kind of discontent grew in last 17, 18 years. That people, uh, those who took part in those revolution, in that people's war, in the movement against monarchy, they had high aspiration and hope from the revolutionaries, from the Maoists. But they saw that when they came to power, they also became corrupt. Uh, there was political uncertainty, and there was nothing very substantial in terms of their issues of their livelihood, which was done by these Maoists even when they were in power. Of course, they were not in power throughout this period. There was political uncertainty, which we'll discuss in tomorrow's session. But in this period, from 2008 to now in 2025, this was a period of great uncertainty and betrayal or disillusionment of the masses of Nepal, uh, whose aspirations were raised by that uh, great people's war, in which masses made tremendous sacrifices. And because of that sacrifices only, that brutal and autocratic institution of monarchy was collapsed. And yet, when they see that these people who claim to be revolutionaries, and when they came to power, they are not seen any different than other bourgeois parties and bourgeois leaders. So that also, if you see on the second day of the uprising last month, on 10th of September, if you see, people's anger was not just against KP Sharma Oli or the revisionist party, CPN, UML, or the Nepalese Congress party, Sher Bahadur Doiba. It was also against the Maoists who led the People's War. That is the tragic irony. So even Prachand's house was attacked, and many communist houses were also attacked. That also shows a lot of disillusionment, discontent among the people. Of course, in that there are different elements involved. Some antisocial elements also might have been involved, one cannot deny. But that also shows the disillusionment with the basically those who led the People's War also. That cannot be denied, and they have become hugely unpopular in Nepali society, apart from CPN, UML, apart from Nepalese Congress Party, even the Maoist and all different factions of Maoist. They have become very unpopular, and even those who became independent, they came out of the Maoist party, they have also lost touch with the masses, with the youth. And this is a very new kind of scenario in the history of Nepal. When you have unrest in the society, you have youth who are angry, and yet the communists are not able to give any direction to that movement and to that discontent in the society. So that is, I think in tomorrow's session, we'll discuss in greater detail what happened in this last 17, 18 years. But basically, unless we understand this backdrop, what we discussed, the history of Nepal, the history of the communist movement in Nepal, and the different fractions within the communist movement, we won't be able to really understand why this was such a huge uprising, which was unprecedented, and throughout Indian subcontinent. In such a short span of time, the collapse of a regime with a youth rebellion, that was indeed surprising for many people, and unprecedented, and also even for the ruling classes, it has sent shock waves. They are also worried. Suddenly, the word Gen Z had become very famous, and they are people using in different contexts, and even the ruling classes are trying to co-opt this kind of new youth who are basically angry, and even though they might not have very fixed plan of action or very vision for the future, one thing is very clear, that the youth of Nepal right now is disillusioned with this entire political process, this entire experiment of bourgeois democratic republican experiment. And there is some kind of revival of this pro monarchy party also. That also is very tragic irony. We'll discuss that also tomorrow, that there is some kind of support emerging for the revival of the monarchy also. But that is not a very dominant trend in Nepalese society even now. So mainly it is the apolitical youth who do not have any plan of action, who do not see the root of the problems of unemployment or disparity or the corruption. They are just angry against these elites who are showing off their wealth and who are not doing anything for the people of Nepal, for the youth of Nepal. And basically, there is a element of kind of apolitical attitude, which is the problem of this youth uprising also. Apart from its positive aspect, that it was so radical that within 24 hours it was able to topple a government. It did not have any strategy or tactics to basically move ahead, what to do after that, and whatever they are doing, it comes from their immaturity, and they are proposing the name of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court or some other leaders who are trying to get advantage of that situation. That we'll discuss tomorrow. But basically, that background of this was played by this betrayal of especially the revolutionary forces who once led the revolution in Nepal, even though they could not accomplish that revolution. They did succeed in overthrow of the monarchy. But after that, their ideological compromises, their corrupt practices, their luxurious lifestyle, all these led to huge disillusionment in the Nepalese society, and especially the youth. And that is the reason for that is broadly the reason. We'll discuss in detail tomorrow. But I think in today's session we can conclude at this point that till 2008 in Nepal's history, 2008 was a watershed movement, because that's when this long and very outdated institution, which in other countries in other parts of the world was overthrown long ago. But because of the peculiar history of Nepal, peculiar historical evolution of Nepal, it sustained for a very long time. And after that, new hopes and aspiration. The history of Nepal after 2008 was the history of very high hopes and aspiration. At the same time, betrayal of these promises, especially by the very people who led the People's War. And that's the reason we have a situation in which there is no direction to this uprising. And at least in near future, one cannot see that this uprising is really leading to any kind of systemic change or a revolution. That's the reason we don't term it as a revolution. Many people use that it was a youth revolution. It's definitely a very radical movement which succeeded in bringing down the government, changing the regime, but it did not succeed in changing the system. So I think I'll conclude at this point. I'll discuss in great detail tomorrow, after 2008 onwards, how other developments took place and what is the main factors responsible for this kind of huge youth uprising. Uh, Let me check if I have any more point to which is missed. So basically, yeah, one more point which needs to be mentioned is that because of this peculiar geographical location between India and China, there is definitely uh, influence and even intervention by, especially by India. There is Indian expansionism in different periods of Nepal. For example, even when British were there, we have discussed that there was a very cordial relation of uh, Ranas with British India, and they agreed to send the Gorkha soldiers to British Indian Army, and that continued even after independence of India. In Indian Army and British Army now, you have a large number of Gorkha soldiers. In fact, the communists in Nepal have made it a huge issue right from the beginning. This also shows some kind of uh, subjugation and against the national sovereignty of Nepal. Apart from that, even after when British left, Indian state has played a very interventionist role in Nepalese politics also. For example, in 1950, there was a treaty signed between India and Nepal. So that treaty was not very equal terms. It was not kind of treaty between two sovereign nations. There was many secret clause in which India was given very preferential treatment, and that demand is also there in the communist movement that that treaty should be abolished and new treaty should be made. So at very crucial periods, the Indian state has intervened in not any kind of military intervention, but through kind of uh, through its intelligence, through its diplomatic missions and all. It has definitely played a very important role in who is going to be the like leader or prime minister or other things also. Because of that, because of this interventionist and expansionist attitude, for example, this large number of Indian businessmen are there in Nepal's society, and in fact, Nepalese bourgeoisie that way is not very strong bourgeoisie, very weak bourgeoisie, and large number of businesses are owned by Indian businessmen. That also is a very important reason for kind of anti-India sentiments within Nepal. In India, many people think that there will be a very good uh, cordial feelings among the people of Nepal uh, because of the cultural and linguistic similarities and all. But in fact, the reality is that there is a very strong anti-India sentiment because of the Indian expansionist, big brotherly attitude of Indian state. And for example, we'll discuss tomorrow that also there was a period of in 2015 when constitution came into existence, new constitution was formalized. Indian state kind of did a blockade in Nepal because still it is dependent. Nepalese economy is highly dependent on imports from India, and there was a blockade by India, by the Modi government. So all these factors lead to huge kind of discontent and anger among the people of Nepal against India. So yeah, these external factors definitely have played role in shaping of the polity of Nepal. And not just India, there has been the intervention of the US imperialism also. Now, of late, through various kinds of NGOs, that definitely is one element which is responsible for whatever happened as part of that so-called Gen Z protest also. That NGOization of the entire movement has also played an important role, especially in the aftermath of the disillusionment with the communist movement. Large number of youth are taking recourse to this kind of NGO kind of politics, very reformist NGO, or identity politics is becoming dominant ideology wise also, as against Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism. You have various strands of identity politics which is getting dominant. So all these factors are also playing a role. We'll discuss in detail tomorrow. But I think with this, I'll conclude today's my part of the discussion. Yeah, other friends and comrades can ask the questions, or if you have anything to add, or I have missed anything, you can add.
Thank you. And you can take a short break. We have some announcements. So, friends, please post your questions in question and information channel. And those who are listening to streaming, Facebook and YouTube streaming, please post your questions in comment boxes. So the priority will be given to Discord text channel. Yeah. So friends, Vedika is also running a YouTube channel. So the Vedika talks and live streamings will be available there. And please subscribe to the channel and share it to your friends. And you can follow Vedika Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages also. You can get the information of Vedika sessions and talks also. And we shared the links in question and information channel. Vedika is also running a WhatsApp group. So it is for sharing information and material suggested by the speakers. And the only admins can message in this WhatsApp group. So those who are not joined in the group, please join the group and share it to your friends also. So in yeah. Okay. So okay. So let's. Ahmed, if you are ready, then we can take questions.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. The first question is from Amulya. How can we characterize Nepal in terms of production relations before and after 2008?
So, production relation definitely in Nepal, at least before 2008, still you had a very strong dominant production relation was definitely some kind of feudalism. Now, what is that nature of feudalism that needs to be studied more concretely? Because there had been some kind of land reforms also, but those not were very half-hearted and very ineffective. And there was a strong feudal kind of tenancy was existing, and the landlordism of feudal kind was there. So there is no doubt that there was this dominant production relation was still feudalism. But even afterwards, after 2008, in fact, some kind of capitalist development, the origin can be traced from the early era also. That it's not that in 2008 only that capitalist development started. Some kind of capitalist development even took place in during the monarchy era, some kind of land reform, some kind of industrialization, not very big, but some industries came into existence, kind of common law, common currency, weights and measures. These kinds of features of modern capitalist economy came into existence. Uh, uh, and especially after 2008, this process has definitely picked up. But even after that, there has not been a very radical steps taken by the successive governments also in the direction of very wide-ranging land reforms. So now, what exactly is the dominant production relations in Nepal at this point of time definitely needs to be studied in its concrete manner. Instead of directly jumping to a conclusion by terming it as capitalist or feudal, I think we need to study more. One thing is very clear, that this transition from feudalism to capitalism has been very long, very staggered. This process has been very staggered in case of Nepal, uh, especially because of the existence of monarchy. Also, this process took very long time, and even after the downfall of the monarchy, there has been huge different kinds of uncertainty and betrayals. So now exactly, we'll discuss tomorrow's session also, that what kind of economy Nepal is having. It is mainly a very backward kind of um, capitalist economy, if you can say that. It is very much dependent on the remittances which are sent by the people, Nepalese people who are settled abroad. So Nepalese, one thing is very sure, that Nepalese capitalism is having a very weak foundation. One part of one reason for that is the geological location of Nepal, the objective limitation. The other is the specific historical evolution of Nepalese society, and there have been definitely some industries, some capitalist class, emergence of capitalist class, uh, and it needs to be studied, their role. And there is an influence of Indian capitalist class also in Nepalese economy, and large number of communist organization term Nepalese capitalism as some kind of comprador capitalism. Uh, Now, that also, I'm not very sure whether that term is very accurate, because even in Nepal's situation, even when there was a monarchy, even when, let's say, King Mahendra was ruling, Nepal's, in terms of foreign policy and all, we see that there is a kind of non-alignment, even during the time of monarchy, even though there has been a increased influence of India, China, US, yet the ruling classes of Nepal have ensured their national independence and sovereignty different phases, despite being like surrounded by very great powers, capitalist and now imperialist China, capitalist India. Uh, it is not acting like a comprador ruling classes, right? Even KP Sharma Oli, if you see, he was presenting a very nationalist stand when it came to India's intervention there. So I do not think that it can be called as some kind of comprador or anything like that. But what it is, it needs to be studied, and accurate kind of what is the real dominant production relations. How do we characterize that? Whether it is feudalism, whether it is capitalism, whether it is semi-feudalism, and what exactly it is, that I think is a matter of more study. One thing is very sure that 2008 collapse of monarchy was a very big watershed movement that definitely picked up the disintegration, the process of disintegration of the feudal production relations in Nepalese society. But what is the current status, I think, is a matter of study.
Comrade. Next question from Sujan. Uh, didn't the British want to expand their market into Nepal? Was it solely geopolitical reasons that prevented the penetration of capitalist relations into Nepal, or were there any other reasons? So this is the question.
Yeah, mainly it was geopolitical reasons. One thing is that the territory of Nepal is very rugged, and it was very costly for the British to launch that expedition and try to conquer entire Nepal if they even wanted. Because on the other hand, you had Chinese uh, monarchy, which was controlling Tibet also. So now, instead of completely conquering Nepal, they thought it better to have a kind of cordial relation with Nepal, and it was basically kept as some kind of buffer state between British India and the Chinese rulers, China on the other hand. And so basically, they thought that if we let it govern by itself and ensure that it does not come under the influence of China, and it continues to send their Gorkha soldiers to our army, which they found very useful, and that was one of the reasons that they thought that that expedition, if they take that expedition to Nepal and to defeat and to conquer the entire territory, that will be much more challenging, not just costly, it will be challenging also. So they even within India, for example, they did not uh, occupy the entire Indian territory. They had with at different levels of relationship with many princely states. Uh, they gave some kind of autonomy to many princely states also. In case of Nepal, uh, they did not disturb that sovereignty beyond a point. They only had this uh, kind of agreement. One was that Sugoli Treaty of Sugoli, in which they ensured that Sikkim and Uttarakhand portion of Kumaon and Garhwal, that became part of British India. And then afterwards, uh, they ensured that they continue to send the Gorkha soldiers, and in return, they were giving the monetary compensation. And after that, they did not really try very hard to completely colonize. They kind of did some kind of cost benefit analysis, and they found that it was very costly, and benefit of is going to be less as compared to that risk involved in that expedition. So as against that, in fact, uh, instead of doing trade also, they found a new trade route to do trade with Tibet via Sikkim. That trade route they opened, and that's how even the very geostrategic significance of Nepal was also reduced because of the invention of a new trade route. Because earlier the trade route from India to Tibet was going through Kathmandu and Novakot and all, but later on it was through Sikkim. So they found a new way out also, and they thought that let this Nepalese society remain in that isolated condition and act as a buffer between China and British India.
Comment. Uh, there is a comment from Siddhartha. it is interesting to note that the Communist Party of Nepal was started in India in 1949 in Kolkata by five young Nepali communists. We know that our Communist Party, CPI, was also started in Tashkent in 1920. So is the comment? Do you have any comments?
Yeah, that is true that in Indian communist movement also the beginning, if we have to trace that beginning, can be traced to 1920. Even though within the within India, the Communist Party, the formation can be traced to 1925 in Kanpur conference. But yeah, Tashkent, M.N. Roy's role there was important. Similarly, in case of Nepalese Communist Party, it was there was a similarity, but there was a difference also in the sense that Nepal like happened to be very close to India, and in fact, not just the communist, large section of the leaders of the Congress, Nepalese Congress Party, they not just studied in India, they took very active part in the freedom struggle of India. So what we know as Nepalese intelligentsia, large section of that have studied India, and in that process only many of them got radicalized, and some of them became communists. So yeah, that is true that that the origin of that Nepalese Communist Party, if you trace that origin, you'll have some Indian connection. But that is also true that that Nepalese Communist Party has always resisted any kind of attempt of kind of dictating any line by the Indian communist. Also, that trend is also there. That it's like there is a very strong sense of sovereignty, and even when there is some kind of there is definitely an influence of Indian communist movement within Nepal, but there is an independent motion of the Nepalese communist movement also, that also needs to be studied in its specificity.
Next, Amulya is asking another question. So, what is the kind of role played by India communist leaders in shaping the policies of Nepali communist parties and their government?
The role played by? I can't see
Indian.
Is it written in this question information?
Yeah, I'm reading it again.
Okay.
So, what is the kind of role played by Indian communist leaders in shaping the policies of Nepali communist parties and their government?
Okay. Played by Indian communist leaders in shaping the policies of Nepalese communists.
Yes.
See, as I mentioned while answering the previous question, it's not that they shaped the policies of Nepalese Communist Party. There was definitely influence. For example, revisionist leaders and revisionist parties have their own influence, and many revisionists in Nepal, for example, they are inspired by CPI, CPM kind of parties and their leadership. And they in turn, of course, are inspired by people like Khrushchev. Similarly, in the revolutionary communist movement, as I mentioned, for example, there was a strong influence of GPCR. So as in India also, Naxalbari movement developed. So Naxalbari had a very strong influence in the communist movement of Nepal also. I was mentioning the Chapa fraction was there, which was very close to Naxalbari also. So they were inspired by Naxalbari, and uh, even though Naxalbari in itself was a example of a mass line, but later on in India also, as this left-wing adventurous trend, which was led by Charu Majumdar, that started. So similarly in Nepal also, there was this trend of left-wing adventurism, which eventually took to a very revisionist direction. So that also, I think I discussed that. Uh, just as CPI ML liberation in India uh, took this journey from left-wing adventurism to revisionism. Similarly, there also CPN ML that took that journey from left-wing adventurism to revisionism. So there you can see some parallels and some influence of the communist movement in India to that the communist movement of Nepal. But despite these influences, you also have to notice that there is an independent motion because of which that People's War succeeded. It could not have been possible with this kind of imitative attitude that you have to copy or you have to imitate, which is the problem in the communist movement, that there is this tendency to copy some revolution of China or that of Russia instead of doing a very concrete analysis and coming up with the strategy and tactics. So Nepalese communists, especially in that period of People's War and some fractions even before that, and even after that, they were able to analyze the concrete conditions of Nepal and accordingly come up with their own strategy and general tactics. And that is the reason that they were instrumental in the downfall of the monarchy. That is a big achievement of the communist movement of Nepal. That we must, I think, highlight that.
So next question is from Tejasvi. Can the transition from a feudal monarchy to a constitutional monarchy be understood as a bourgeois democratic revolution in Marxist terms?
Definitely not. It can't. This in itself can't be termed as bourgeois democratic revolution. In fact, that bourgeois democratic revolution could not be accomplished in this transition, even though it is a step ahead as compared to that absolute feudal monarchy. Especially, for example, if you compare that Rana period, as compared to that, the 1950s, that period of multi-party democracy, that was definitely a step towards bourgeois democratic revolution, but that could not accomplish that revolution, basically. So it was a kind of incomplete revolution. And even the Jan Andolan won 1991. After that, that multi-party democracy, constitutional monarchy came into existence. Even that was not kind of accomplished in that sense. Now, that collapse of monarchy in 2008 was definitely a very long leap in that direction of new democratic revolution, but not that event in itself. This, for example, the task of like it was up to the Maoist leadership to take it towards new democratic revolution. It was certainly bourgeois democratic revolution. I mean, it was the bourgeoisie was very wavering. So anyway, bourgeois democratic revolution could not be carried out by the bourgeoisie. It was up to the communist leadership to take it towards new democratic revolution. But that also, like we will discuss tomorrow, that is the main reason of this increasing disillusionment in the Nepalese society, that expectations were not realized, and still you have that Nepalese revolution is still not yet a finished task, basically.
Okay, comrade. So we don't have any questions yet. So do you have any comments for tomorrow's session? Or
Yeah, so basically tomorrow I'm going to talk about the developments after 2008 in more concrete terms, that what happened after 2008 when monarchy was collapsed and a new kind of republican Nepal came into existence, which is very new in the history of Nepal. And what were the expectations, aspirations of the people, and under what conditions those aspirations were raised, and how these aspirations were kind of betrayed, and how the process of constitution, the constituent assembly and the new constitution was made. Incidentally, that demand of constituent assembly, a new constituent assembly, was made by the Communist Party from the very beginning. In 1949 itself, the Communist Party had made that demand of a new democratic, new kind of constituent assembly as part of that line of new democratic revolution. That was realized after 2008. But that process also took very long time of constitution making. By 2015, that constitution came into existence, and then even after that, basically there was a lot of political instability, and basically what led to this youth uprising, that I'm going to focus on, and then what can we expect in future also. A little bit I'm going to talk tomorrow. What are the different political forces present in Nepali society right now? That also we can talk in brief.
okay, thank you, comrade. So friends, in today's session we discussed first from the beginning the geographical setting of Nepal and its history. History of Nepal starting from 18th century, at monarchies and unification of Nepal. Then during the British India period, how Nepal was, and uh, due to this world communist movement, what were the effects on Nepal and the different rise of different streams, communist streams in Nepal's politics, and we discussed that also. And the rise of anti-revisionist Maoist movements and people war movements against the monarchy, and the present establishment of multi-party democracy in 2008. So we discussed from the beginning, from the 18th century to the main uh, what we call in Nepal's history. So after that, to understand this present Gen Z movement, so we need to understand the history of Nepal also, and this quite anger in the Gen Z movement. Does it enough to change a systematic change in Nepal, or do we have do we need any organizational direction to the Gen Z movement? So these are the questions, and we will discuss these things in tomorrow's session detailedly. So let's meet tomorrow, and so we can end it today. Uh, Please, you can tap on the receiver button, and we'll meet tomorrow. Good night. Bye.
Good night.